and what we can learn from the internet to do a little bit better. So before I start talking, this is a non-traditional event. I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to come back on stage in a second, and I want you guys to clap for me wildly for two reasons. Number one, I've had a hard week, and I try not to start drinking before 6 p.m. on the weekday, but whatever. And the second reason is I want you to pretend I'm your ideal political candidate. Whatever that looks like in your head, I'm the ideal political candidate. I'm going to come on stage and we're at my rally, right? And you're going to clap for all the policy issues I'm going to go through. Here's where it's a little different than a normal political rally. I want you to clap according to whether or not you agree with what I'm saying and how much you care about it. Okay, you guys ready? So, no. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Kanye, Jeremy, Lynn, Einstein, Caesar, Kennedy I, your next President of the United States. Thank you, America. Thank you, America. Yep. Wow. How you guys doing? Hey, who wants to break into the cake and throw a party tonight? Yeah. Who wants to see Sarah Palin as your next Vice President of the United States? Woo! You guys go neighbors. How many of you think that gay rights are not just a gay issue, but a civil rights issue? And it's beautiful. How many of you think abortion should be legal? Legalizing marijuana. Obamacare is a really fantastic piece of healthcare legislation. Thanks, Colin. The Constitution is a document that can never be altered. Woo! Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. Yeah? Right? Okay. Israel should probably not attack Iran or any Arab country. I just went through a bunch of ideas that aren't necessarily related, but they're going to make up the bulk of what you're going to hear about in election 2012. And the reason is because that's how we really deal with candidates in this country. We assess them on the basis of their personality, shiny, awesome, and we also assess them based on a laundry list of issues. But that's not really good enough anymore. And what I want to talk about is the fact that that's a superficial way of looking at candidates, and there's no ideology behind it. So what does that exactly mean? What are we talking about, ideology? Well, you know, you'd be actually hard-pressed right now to find a true ideologically pure conservative who is going to vote for Rick Santorum. It's not necessarily, for conservatives, about the actual intellectual conservatism. It's more about small government than it is about church and state. Anyone see the church and state comment Santorum made? I didn't know it. You guys should just read notes. Screw the iPad. This is cool. Yeah, and again, you'd be hard-pressed to find any kind of coherent ideology with the Democrats. Anyway, that's the way I feel. I'm sure some people feel that progressivism has some kind of overarching thing, but when you actually get down from Democrat to Democrat, it really varies. So instead, let's put forget that in a bit. So my feeling is we need to develop a new institution. That these two political parties aren't our best options. Instead, let's put all the current institutions that are in bed with these lobbyists on one side of the line, and let's put this other side of the line to be, we'll call it the foundation, right? And what the foundation that I'd like to see happen is taking a hard look at the institutions we have now and seeing if we can do better. Take NU, for example, all right? Thanks to Northwestern, we have a leg up in pretty much every powerful institution you can think of. Got finance, law, all of business really, media, government, whatever you want to be a part of, right? And these connections between Northwestern and these institutions aren't just about getting us jobs, right? It's much deeper than that. For example, something Henry Bienen did really well when he was president here. I know you guys love Morty, but Henry Bienen really built up this school's endowment to the fact where we're actually, that's us, the Wildcats. It's a real Wildcat, so you know. We have over $6 billion, our endowment's over $6 billion. That's 12 times the national average, and which is about 500 million, and the actual median is only 90 million. So, which begs the question, Why does a nonprofit even have that much money? What are we going to do with it? And don't you think giving us that amount of money, especially how Beanan earned a lot of it, which is through deals on Wall Street with his buddies, not necessarily a bad thing, but that's where a lot of it's coming from investments. Don't you think that may have something to do with the greater access that financial institutions have to recruit us on campus? And don't you think that kind of scratch floating around all institutions in our lives might affect and erode some of the institutions that are causing us so many problems right now? This is how we're supposed to think in terms of our policy issues. The Venn diagram right now is very polarized. It doesn't really overlap. You just get a laundry list of 2 issues, and you got to pick whichever one works for you. What if we could put all these guys and all their Goldman buddies and all that crap on one side of the table? What would we put here? I think that's really asking the questions, where should we start learning our lessons from, if not from these institutions where profit-making ventures are so much a part of the policy-making process in this country, and we aren't. And I think the solution is the internet. That means, very broadly, the internet behaves very different than traditional top-heavy institutions in this country in business. And as we get more interconnected at the top level, as the 1% gets stronger, the internet, it shows a completely different set of behaviors that we should learn from in creating policy for the next 20 years. So the first value I want to talk about, and I'm only going to do 3 because it's an abbreviated version of the talk, is accountability. Now, any company has to be accountable to its consumers, right? The free market operates in such a way that, if your company's doing a bad job, you're going to not do as well. But with companies who rely on social networks, their consumers are their whole business. And if you piss a consumer off, he's just going to leave to go to another social network. Unfortunately, government doesn't work that way. We don't have another social network besides government we can lean back on. But look at, for example, Facebook, who is it seems like the only provider of social network with a lot of prowess right now. They made a timeline, right? I don't know what to do with my timeline. I'll put that unicorn with the flamethrower. I don't really like timeline. And you know what? 13,000 people agree, and they made a Facebook page about it. And Facebook can't really take that down. As controlling as they are as a company, Facebook can't take down its pages because it's part of the social network. It's part of the contract between the consumer and the company, right? And if we can create that kind of accountability where this stuff doesn't get shut down by our government, where the free press actually has a way to create something like a page, like it doesn't have to go through Fox News. If you can go through something like a Facebook page, I think it'd be a lot more effective. Transparency. Remember this guy? Poor Andrew Weiner. He sure didn't know how to communicate very well on the Twitter, did he? And it's not just an issue of communication. It's not just a breakdown in communication. Like the fact that he's trying to send direct message and send this to the entire world is pretty embarrassing. But not only that, he's missing a whole chunk of how we interact now, which is through Twitter, which is through social media. We should not be only educating our senators about it. They should be taking the initiative to utilize it and to understand its implications. And lastly, I want to talk about collective action, which is probably the most important part of what I'm talking about today. I raised $4,000 for my group Massive.tv, and it's just random, man. We just got $4,000 by hitting up social media bloggers again and again, just a war of attrition until we got this money, and that's phenomenal. Before, fundraising like this was a letter-writing campaign. All Kickstarter did was create this social template, and I could make $4,000 that I could make before. They take 7% too. They make a lot of money this way, just because they made themselves a nexus for social action. Startups are incredibly lean, and they're easily replaced. Don't we wish government was that way? What can we get out of these reactions? And more, in the way these startups work, that can redefine how we make policy. Well, I think, the first one is to engage rationally, which means that we can't afford to think that healthcare is the same issue as gay rights. They're not, and you need to be able to engage them in a very different way. One's a moral issue, whatever side of the fence you are on it is. Healthcare is a lot more logistical. Policy like that, we need to be able to engage in a rational way. Secondly, we've got to use social media, and I don't mean that lightly. This can be a whole fundamental shift in the way we talk about policy in this country, not just in the way we deliver social media, but the way we understand consumer behavior, citizen behavior in reaction to these dispatches. You know, just look at the difference between Barack Obama and some Republican candidates on how they deliver social media messages, but also look at the Republican candidates that actually have some of the face-to-face interactions, so it seems, with their social media that it's actually pretty robust and interesting to look at. They're different, but they're both very effective compared to 5 years ago. And the last one is kind of general. I want to encourage you to think outside the status quo. We can no longer rely on two political parties, one side or the other, to make our decisions for us. To be honest, you know, the reason I did this clapping thing up front is because a lot of you may support gay rights, but may not support big government. The consensus that is developing in our younger generation isn't something we worked on. We got to work on it together, and we got to use the tools that are at our disposal, and not the ones that are trying to keep us down and erode our